Well, what's up, YouTube? It's your boy, the Ol Drunken Geek, and I'm back. We're back. We took a little break for the ODG show, but yeah, man, I hate to come back on such a downer. Last week we lost the great comic book editor, creator, writer, and just overall pop personality, Stan Lee. For those of you who don't know Stan Lee, you can leave the fucking channel right now because who the fuck doesn't know Stan Lee? He's a great man. He inspired a lot of the things I love. Spider-Man. He co-created Spider-Man, Fantastic Four, the Hulk, Thor, Black Panther, and infinitum, as you can say. It's a bummer. It's definitely a bummer, but it's not like he died young. The dude, lived to be 95, almost 96. And, up till the last couple years of his life, he did what he loved doing. He worked. I saw a documentary one time where he was like, I don't want to retire. Don't make me quit. I love what I do every day, and it kept him young in spirits for such a long time to keep working. So, even though it is sad, I don't want us to mourn on this channel too much. I want us to celebrate his life. So with that being said, I'm just going to I just wanted to do a tribute episode to the great Stan Lee, and just do a list for my top 10 favorite Marvel movies. Not Marvel Studio movies, I already did that list. Just all of the Marvel movies. X-Men, Fox X-Men movies, Sony Spider-Man movies, every live-action Marvel movie that's come out, this is that list. So number 10 is a movie that you would think would be higher on my list, but it's just not enough superhero in there for me to be top of my list, and it is Logan. It is a beautiful movie. It is a great movie. It is a Western. It carries great depth and complexity of his character. It shows a more adult version of Logan that we've seen, or Wolverine that we had seen up to that point. It bookends his story. It's a beautiful, great movie. It just, to me, it kind of fumbled the origin of X-23. Who I love that fucking character. Not that it was trash, that they did a complete trash, but it was just so much better in the books that it was hard for me to forgive. Also, like I said, not enough super heroics, man. It was a great movie. It was more down to earth and gritty. Still couldn't be higher on my list, but it did crack the top 10, which is a huge, huge win. Number 9, Deadpool Dos. Now you might be saying, nah, man, I thought Deadpool 1 was better than Deadpool 2. Nah, not really. Like, when you watch Deadpool, especially in the beginning of that movie, there's, like a little bit of pacing issues, and you're like, with it, you kind of like, I don't know about this. But I've seen the movie twice already, and everything that's set up is paid off for the characters and for the story as a whole, and it shows a lot more heroics than the first one. In the second one, man, you get Cable, you get Juggernaut, you get fucking Colossus fighting Juggernaut, and it is very satisfying as far as the story and the character development and where they leave it off, and how it kind of goes in deep but then pulls the rug from under you with the end credit scenes, which I'm not sure if that's canon. We'll see the next movie, but yeah, man. Deadpool 2 I thought was a great pick. So, number 8. Some people are gonna fucking crucify me for this one. Infinity War. Avengers Infinity War. I know that it was a huge spectacle, and I know what I just said in the 2 other picks that I had is the opposite of this, because this had all the fucking heroics. It had everybody. It had everything you'd ever want to see. But to me, it didn't have a satisfying or complete enough story, because it's half of a story. We all know that Avengers 4 is going to complete the story. But yeah, we had all the heroics. We had all the shit. It was awesome. And it ended, nobody expected the snap. Like, I was like, alright, they might do the snap. I don't know how that's going to go down. Boom, they actually fucking did the snap and just cut the movie there, which I love. It's spectacle, but it's mostly that. It's so many characters that it becomes really hard to handle. And, that's why it's not higher up on my list. But it is a fucking great movie. If you guys still haven't seen Infinity War, I know it just came out this year. What the fuck are you doing watching this, man? go out and watch it right now, and then you can come back and watch the rest of this fucking video. Now here comes the real controversy for my number 7 pick. The controversy is that it's higher than Infinity War. X-Men, Days of Future Past, to me is the best Fox X-Men movie to date, because they were able to balance the old characters, the new characters, with a good story that made sense. I mean, there's time travel, so there's obviously timey-wimey, wishy-washy stuff, but they did it pretty linearly in a way, if you want to use that word linearly. With time travel, that makes no sense, but they did it in a very comprehensive way that it was easy to follow if you had been following both timelines, like the original X-Men movies and the First Class movies. It was like, yeah, you just jump right the fuck in. It corrected a bunch of the stuff that was weird with the X-Men timelines. But all in all, man, it was a great movie, and I've watched this several times, and I don't get tired of watching this movie. My number 5 and my number 6 pick are tied together because I still can't make up my mind on which movie is better. To me, they're tied, and they couldn't be movies that are more different. You've got Captain America, Winter Soldier, and Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1. Both movies are great for their own reasons. So Winter Soldier was a great spy thriller, and it gave you a lot of those elements. It was moving the story of Steve Rogers forward in a very satisfying and very logical way. Obviously, he's a man out of time, and you got some of that in the Avengers movie, but this one really drove it home. It ended destroying S.H.I.E.L.D. They did away with S.H.I.E.L.D. At the end of the movie, which was great, because it let the Avengers just be the Avengers. They were their own thing after this movie. They weren't like under S.H.I.E.L.D. and anything like that. It was a very serious, not dour, but just a very serious, down-to-earth movie. And the complete opposite of that was Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1. It was so fucking out there, literally out in space, and it had so much heart, had great action, great visuals, and I can't overstate or understate the heart that this fucking movie had. In just whatever it was, an hour and change, we got so attached to these characters that now, it's been 3 movies that they've shown up, and they're almost like household names, and we got so attached to them in that first fucking movie, which was a feat in itself, because there's so many characters in the group, and the group as a whole works kind of like the Avengers in their dynamic. Really cool, really love this movie. So my number 4 pick is one of the first cameos that Stan Lee actually did in like the modern era of movies, because he had been in other cameos before. He had been in the Spider-Man cartoon, the 90s cartoon, and like the last episode they showed Stan Lee. He had done a cameo on the Hulk miniseries and stuff like that. And, he had been here and there. He had been in Mallrats. He had been, he had done stuff. People already knew who Stan Lee was, obviously. But in a movie, this is the first time I recall him. I believe he was
The first X-Men.
Yeah, you're right. The first X-Men. He was in the first X-Men. He was also in the first X-Men. But this one was one of the big ones. It was like, hey, that's Stan Lee. And I actually went to watch this in the movies, because X-Men I caught on VHS. Yeah, motherfuckers, I said VHS. From Blockbuster at that. But yeah, Spider-Man. One of my favorite Stan Lee cameos, and it's very short, is the first Spider-Man. He just pulls a kid out of the way when the thing was falling on him. But this movie as a whole was great, man. It's a work of art. Yeah, it has some corny parts that don't live up, to our standards right now, maybe. The Green Goblin did look kind of weird. He looked like he looked like he was made to be printed on toys and stuff like that. But the story was satisfying, man, and the Peter Parker was satisfying. Tobey Maguire did a great job. That's how I always imagined Peter Parker being in my head. Mostly because prior to reading any Spider-Man comics, I watched the 90s animated series. And Tobey Maguire kind of embodied that Spider-Man. That was my first Spider-Man. Because around that time, I also tried reading the books, but it was fucking out of control. That Spider-Man was out of control. It was like Ben Reilly, but fucking Scarlet Spider, and there were clones. It got fucking weird in the comics more or less around that era. So it was kind of hard to jump in the comics at that time. But the show was like my, not my first time I had seen Spider-Man, but the first time I really related with the character and really dug my claws into the character. And it translated exactly into Tobey Maguire's performance. The heart in that movie, man, was fucking out of control. You felt for him because you lived with him in a way. Like, it's a difference between, like, what I just said about Guardians is like, oh man, they did a good thing about, connecting us to these characters, spreading it around. If you could focus that into one character and just follow that one character through different stages of his life, when he becomes Spider-Man, when he gets his powers first, then losing his uncle, the way that played out was like, it was heartbreaking. It was like watching Mufasa die almost. Even though I knew it was coming, because Uncle Ben dies in every fucking iteration, even though I knew it was coming, it still fucking hurt. It still stung. And, this was the first movie because, before this, around that time, we had already gotten X-Men, yeah, and that was cool, still toned down. And we had gotten things like Blade, which was great, but it's still, he's a vampire hunter, looks more realistic. We had things like Spawn, wasn't too great, it was great in its own way, but it wasn't too great. We had Steel, which was just trash. We had like the muted versions. Only the things that were like dark and gritty and more realistic were able to become superhero movies within the superhero genre. And this is the first time, I guess we had Christopher Reeve's Superman. That was way before my time. And that by this time, by the 90s and the early 2000s, it already looked super corny. Even though that's a great movie, but it looked corny. This is the first time where you believed in superheroes in the movies. Like, whoa, they fucking nailed Spider-Man. He's actually web slinging and he doesn't look goofy or corny or anything like that. And it still gave you that sense of heroics of like, wow, someone to strive to look up to. And I love that movie, man. If you could throw that on at any moment, any point in the middle of that movie, and I could just watch it from then on. You watch it from the beginning, I watch it 5 minutes till it ends, I watch it dead smack in the middle. That's a great classic movie, and that to me became like a turning point in superhero movies. So we're nearing the end, and my number 3 pick is Avengers, the original Avengers. I loved how the team came together. I loved how for the people that have been following it, we already had all the heroes and you knew something about it, and Joss Whedon did a great job of every time you saw them within the movie of the Avengers, if you had not already seen those movies, the side movies, the tie-in movies, he did a good job of just explaining it real quick, who they were, what they were about, boom, and you're in. And, just the dynamic between them, the dialogue between them was so great. And the action scenes, the first time you saw the Avengers, I thought it was going to be corny, because in all the trailers, all they showed was Chitauri. And I'm like, they're just going to fight some aliens? Nah, dude. That fucking last battle scene was great, and the formation of the Avengers was great, and the dynamic was great. They paid a lot of respect to the characters. That's why that movie is my top 3. So my number 2 pick is Captain America: Civil fucking War, man. Civil War was a combination of a lot of things that were like already in the trajectory to crash in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Their philosophies between Iron Man and Captain America were already, contradicting, and they were already there. And, they did put emphasis on their friendship, but also on Bucky and Captain's friendship. And when those two things collided head to head, it was beautiful to watch. The acting in that movie was top notch. We got the introduction of Spider-Man in the MCU in this movie, the introduction of Black Panther in the MCU in this movie. So, the movie has a lot going for it. And yeah, man, it has everything you could want from a Marvel movie, especially one that's like, down to earth, but still about these super heroics. It's kind of like a paradox of how you can get these things to work. But they fucking threaded that needle, man, and that's why it's my number 2. We're at my number 1. And my number 1 favorite Marvel movie of all time is the original Fantastic Four movie. I'm not talking about the one that came out in the early 2000s. I'm talking about the one in the 1980s. Now, the reason it's not Fantastic Four. I just have to give a shout out to Fantastic Four because, they're like the comics that started the Marvel Comics line, if it makes any sense. So at this point, Stan Lee was gonna quit Marvel because he was tired of, doing comic books. And his wife told him, you should just go in and do one last run of a comic book however you want it. And he did, and that ended up being the Fantastic Four. And from the Fantastic Four, he gave him real problems, he gave him real issues, and from there, the rest of Marvel grew. He was given more books and stuff like that to do. So, that's, if it wasn't for Fantastic Four, we wouldn't get our Thors, our Spider-Mans, our Black Panthers, our Hulks, so on and so forth. So I just wanted to give the Fantastic Four a shout out. But all 4 of those movies were trash. So they're not on my list. Alright, back to the list. My number 1 pick is Spider-Man 2 from the Sony Spider-Man, original Spider-Man movies. Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2. This movie has the most heart of damn near any movie. Just any regular movie. You feel a lot for Peter. Basically what I said about the first movie just intensified to the next level. It is what a Spider-Man story should be. His life should be shit, and then his Spider-Man-ness makes his life even more shit. And that's what this movie was. But it did give a satisfying resolution, and it made you root for the hero the whole time. The villain was also a very sympathetic villain. Dr. Octopus, he didn't mean to be evil. It's just something that kind of happened to him. And the shift in tones in this movie at certain points, at some point it just became a horror flick for 2 minutes, and then just went back to being a Spider-Man flick. Little details like that I can appreciate. Also acting was top-notch. Action was top-notch. There's not much more I can say about this movie other than just go out and watch it, man. Go out. If you haven't seen Spider-Man 2, obviously start with Spider-Man 1 and then watch Spider-Man 2. You could probably skip 3. You gotta watch 3. But that is, to me, it has set the bar for what a comic book movie, superhero movie could be. Yeah, you got The Dark Knight, that's a great movie, but that's also going back to the down-to-earth, gritty stuff. If you want super heroics, the top bar in that list is Spider-Man 2. And yeah, man, that's my little list of Marvel movies. And let's not forget while we're doing this, rest in peace, Stan Lee. Thank you for everything. Thank you for creating a big chunk of my childhood. And yeah, man, Excelsior.